Hello. Yes. Uh-huh. I do. Could you call back? I'm actually in the middle of something. Will you call back and just leave your number on the machine, and I'll give you a call back? Thanks. Bye.
Like what, a dramatic intervention?
It's the president. He wanted to drink. I think one of the big forming influences of me was when I was a kid in Detroit. They had a visiting artist by the name of Gordy Newton who was working in the foundry that I was working in, and it was really amazing because he wasn't this kind of a like art creep, you know. He was just like, he was this giant thug. I mean, but like a really gentle guy, but I mean just like this brute of a guy who was very, you know, unpretentious and but really smart, and was concerned about things that, you know, or actually rather made his work about things that he was actually concerned about. Like, he really loved remote control cars. I mean, there was this huge guy who really loved these stupid little remote control cars, and he was devoted to them, and he would make work about that. And to me, that makes sense. I mean, like, it makes sense that if you, you know, like, love to go fishing, that you would make paintings that remind you of when you're fishing and what you think about when you're fishing. And because obviously it's a, you know, it becomes a metaphor for something else, but that's what you love. I mean, you know, like the two-dimensionality of a canvas or the, you know, kind of like some like art history problem doesn't keep me up at night. I just don't think about that stuff, and I don't care. I mean, it enters into my work because I'm educated and I know something about art history. It's not like I'm a naive artist. I don't, you know, I'm not divorced from that, but it's an aside. It's a total aside to what's really going on. It's more interesting to me to find stuff that's kind of going on behind the scenes that you know, like that, you know, that's where, in a lot of ways, like one really huge influence on me was punk rock. I mean, that you know, like here was a thing that you could just do yourself, that you could, you know, that you didn't, that, you know, I mean, do it yourself. I mean, that's what everybody was doing, was, you know, and obviously there was, you know, the media picked up on that, and the industry picked up on that. You had your Cyndi Laupers and your Go-Go's and stuff like that. But I mean, there was, you know, really great bands of people who were just doing what they wanted to do. They weren't making any money at it, most of them, but this is what they wanted to do, and they did it. And that to me is art. That's what art is. That's, you know, that the inspirational part. I mean, some of it was good and some of it was not, but, you know, on that level, at least it was all inspired. And that's hopefully what I'm doing. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm dug in like a tick. Yeah, I'm dug in. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Philadelphia is a great city to be an artist in that you can get a lot done in Philadelphia. There's kind of nothing holding you back. I mean, if you want to do it in Philadelphia, you can do it. You'll have the time. There's the space still. The wage level's high enough that you can make your living and do what you want to do. The, you know, only factor that's missing so far is, you know, anybody really noticing it. It's kind of lacking, and you know, you're not going to become famous in Philadelphia. It's just not going to happen. And you know, if you accept that and that's fine, then it's a great place to work. I mean, because you can do anything you want. I mean, you can, you know, You can set up an iron foundry, you can do whatever, you know, and things that you could never do in New York City. I mean, never, ever, in a million years.
Is that an appealing?
New York?
Yeah.
No. It's in part what I want to paint, and it's also partly what I want people to see and what I want people to, you know, the painting that I want people to see. So I find it that people relate rather easily to animals, that you can put yourself in the place of an animal, that you can identify with an animal a lot easier than you can with a person, because when you're looking at a person, or say a portrait or a painting of a person, there's a lot of preconceptions and there's a lot of barriers. It's an other thing. But whereas people just kind of, they'll just walk up to a dog and, you know, like hug a dog, and you just won't do that to a person. It's the same with a painting. So that's part of the reason for the animals.
So it's not just that they happen to be in your visual orbit.
Well, also that's true too. I mean, they're, you know, the birds that I paint are birds that, you know, I can see right out here outside the window at my bird feeder, or that I see when I'm on my boat and I'm fishing. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of wildlife in an urban environment, and especially in like an old industrial environment where there's, you know, there's things growing because things have been left to fallow for so long that there's environments for these creatures. So there's a lot of nature here, and you know, it's a kind of urban nature, but it's there just the same. So they are things that I do see every day.
I think animals have a certain erotic power.
Well, horses are sexy, that's for sure. I mean, horses are just really sexy animals. What?
Birds as well. Birds are traditional.
Birds, yeah, I guess birds are too. I mean, there is something sexy about birds and too, but I think especially, you know, horses have this kind of, I mean, you know, they're just these big, meaty, fleshy, you know, animals that are just really sexy. I mean, they're really sensual. They're, you know, they're great to touch. I mean, they're just beautiful. They're really tactile. In terms of the buildings, you know, if you look out the window here, you can see, you know, any number of buildings that were built, you know, mid-19th century. And it's almost like this giant, like, what happened? Like, you know, all this got built, and then what happened? Like, how does it make economic sense to just walk away from these huge structures? I mean, it's a little mysterious. It's sort of weird. So there's kind of a mystery, and there's definitely a romance that's attached to the buildings for me. My grandfather on my father's side was a machinist, and he made motors for race car engines, and my other grandfather was an electrician, and he worked in a giant, the world's largest at the time, factory, you know, wiring stuff. So that, you know, there's that too. It's definitely connected to that kind of stuff. I look at a building, and I think about people. You know, I look at an animal, and I think about, you know, it's, you know, you put yourself into the animal. You put, you know, or you put another person into the animal, and you interact with it the way that you would a person, but there's not the same barriers. I mean, it's kind of a way to get at something without being so direct that you set up more barriers between yourself and the viewer. I mean, if you write like, if I took a canvas and wrote happy on it, you know, it wouldn't necessarily convey happiness. Or if I was feeling happy when I was painting a canvas, it might not convey happiness. There's a kind of you have to be sort of removed from it. You have to set these kind of metaphors that kind of channel someone into where you want them to be, rather than, you know, being so direct about it. And you also have to accept that it's not all going to go that way. You know, it's not like a formula, and there's some that are more successful than others, obviously. Well, I started out with the background I worked on first. It's kind of a long process of laying down a lot of layers of paint and sanding some away and revealing past layers and building up more layers and stuff till you get the kind of background that suggests depth that kind of works like in a kind of, it's more than just, a matte background. It's got a presence to it. So then you go from there, and then you rough in the image of what you're working on. In this case, of course, it's a horse, and I've been working on this painting for a few months now, on and off. And there's areas that I really like on this painting, and of course there's still areas that I'm struggling with a little bit. I'm still working on the eye, whether to have it be, it's kind of dead the way it is right now, and I'm just kind of struggling with whether I want to keep that or not. I don't really draw all that well, so that's always a struggle for me, is getting proportions right and all that kind of stuff. I cheat too, but even still, it's pretty tough to get everything right. So that's always a struggle. And then you got to work on, getting a quality that you really like. That, when you stand back, really makes sense as a whole. But then when you get up to look at it close, it all maintains its interest. Like if you look in here real close, it's real pleasing. It's nice. I like it. That's good. That's what I'm after, is something that works both in an abstract way, in a larger, or not just both, but it works all of, in as many ways as I can, in like a big, overall compositional way, works in a kind of a narrative way, it works, like in a painterly way. So I'm always kind of struggling with that these days. Initially it wasn't that way. I'd just paint, there'd be one image and it would be black, and the illusion of depth was created largely by the background, and that was it. It was black, it was a silhouette, and that was the end of it. Kind of missed that in some ways, but this is kind of what, it's not satisfying for a long time to paint that way. This is a sketch. This one here, this is the card for the show. This was a sketch that I did early on. It's not the same horse, but it's the same stables. Here's another sketch. So a lot of times I'll work paintings out first. This is my girlfriend's dog, Elmo. A lot of times I'll work stuff out. Like the quality that I'm looking for, a lot of times is not quick to come up. So I have to play with it, what I want to do. I'm never happy with paintings that look too painted. I always like them to look sort of like they just happened. Like there's something natural about the way that it just happened. If it looks like a painting to me, I'm not happy with it. Like for example, like this here on this sink painting, where you've got the highlight effects on the faucet parts, it works from a distance, but when you get up close, it really looks like it was painted, and it really blows Dingo's kidneys. It just doesn't work at all. So that's got to be worked on here. When I'm done with it, I hope that it looks, like I said, like almost like it just happened. Like there's no other way that it could have happened. It doesn't look like a painting, ideally. It looks not like a photograph, but just like something that happened. It just looks natural. It doesn't look, I don't want my hand to be in it too much. I don't want, if it's like a movie, if there's special effects and all you see is the special effects, it's a shitty movie. You shouldn't even realize that it's happening. It should just happen. It should just happen. So you got to lay back and not be showy, and that's a touchy process. When I first came to Philadelphia back in '85, I painted a lot about Detroit and about the experience of Detroit, because when you leave a place, that's generally when it starts to come into focus. You can't see it for where you are. It's usually you're painting 4 or 5 steps back from where you were. At least that's the way I usually am. And I was doing things a lot more about Detroit and about my father and about my grandfathers, and about the work that they did and the city that Detroit was. And now I'm more sort of nestled into my own life. And although those buildings were Philadelphia buildings that I painted early on, it was kind of with a Detroit view on. If you get what I'm saying, it was kind of like through the lens of Detroit. looking at the old buildings in Philadelphia, which were even older than the ones in Detroit by a long shot, because the Industrial Revolution kind of hit its peak here before it did in Detroit. And now the animals, I guess I am painting more animals, and it's not like I have a set program, though. It's not like there's a, you know, like I will now paint, you know, I've decided that, you know, this direction or whatever. It just kind of happens that way, and it makes sense, and it kind of, when you look back on it, there is a pattern that happens, but it's more because of just what's happening with me in my life and what's happening, what I choose to look at and stuff like that. But I'm still fascinated by, you know, industrial design and architecture and, you know, big macho industrial stuff. And I think it's reflected in the paintings of the animals in a weird way. There's kind of a decayed urban feel even to the animals. I mean, to their environments or whatever. The great thing about art is that, well, at least for me, is that there's no pressure in it, because I don't depend on it for my living. So it's not like I have to do whatever. I mean, I can do whatever the F I want. And that's really satisfying. I mean, I mean, there are people that I think about when I'm doing it, and I'm doing it for people, and there's a reason that I'm doing it other than to please myself, but I'm my own boss in as much as you can ever be your own boss. And that's really nice.